Done with general embryology. Now we'll be starting with the systemic embryology. And the first system that we are going to start is GIT, development of gastrointestinal tract. चलो हो गई क्लास खत्म करो अटेंडेंस ले लो तो चुप रहो एकदम चुप हो जाओ एकदम सिर्फ सामने देखना है आज डिस्कशन नहीं करना है सामने देखना है वेरी गुड थैंक यू नाउ लेट्स स्टार्ट विद आवर टॉपिक टुडे हमने इसको डिवाइड कर लिया है ठीक है डेवलपमेंट बिकॉज हम एक साथ पूरा जीआईटी डेवलपमेंट तो नहीं पढ़ सकते so we will go step by step. Today we are going to study about development of Foregut. Okay, so in the previous class we had discussed about foldings. Pin drop silence, I mean pin drop silence. ये मैंने मतलब कि स्कूल टीचर्स होते थे ना स्केल से मारते थे तो वही रिपीट करना चाहते हो आप लोग कैसे मानोगे आपको रिक्वेस्ट कर रही हूँ चुप हो जाओ आप चुप ही नहीं हो रहे हो आदत बिगड़ गई आप लोगों की अभी भी कुछ लड़कियां हैं पीछे जो इधर उधर ऐसे देख रही हैं सामने देखो अपना फोन बंद कर दो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग टॉपिक है और हमें जल्दी खत्म करना है क्योंकि फिर उसके बाद हमारा सेशन है आज एसजीडी का ठीक है तो हमने टॉपिक को डिवाइड कर दिया है टुडे वी आर गोइंग टू स्टडी अबाउट डेवलपमेंट ऑफ फोगट एंड इन द प्रीवियस क्लास वी रीच अप टू this cephalocaudal folding and lateral folding. Okay, so what was the end result of this folding? There was this formation of cylindrical shape of the embryo. Okay, so we'll quickly have a look on the consequences of like what was the end result of cephalocaudal folding and what was the end result of lateral folding. Okay, तो जिन्होंने while like those who are not paying attention वो भी अभी दोबारा से they can recall. Okay, so starting with development of Foregut. Now this was what kind of folding is taking place over here from this cranial end to the caudal end. This type of folding occurs in the sagittal plane or in the median plane. Okay, that result into the formation of the head part and the tail part. And what is happening here? What we can see over here, there is formation of this oropharyngeal membrane which ruptures during the 4th week, formation of the cloacal membrane at the caudal end, and this part which is inside, this is the part which is derived from the endoderm. So during development, during the folding, a part of the endoderm is taken inside to form the gut tube. Okay, so the gut tube is basically, it is derived from the endoderm. So can you recall the structures over here? What are these structures? Anybody? So what is this outer lining? This is, yes, this is amniotic cavity. So this is your amnion which is lined by the somatopleuric, it's somatopleuric intraembryonic mesoderm. This is splachnopleuric intraembryonic mesoderm. This is lateral plate of the mesoderm which divides into two, somatopleuric and splachnopleuric. Okay, so we have this ectoderm, then we have this endoderm, and the red color part is mesoderm. Okay, so end result is formation of the cranial fold and the caudal fold. Then there is this endoderm which is taken inside to form the gut tube. Now what happens during the central or the lateral folding? What is the end result? So here this both the folds, see this is somatopleuric, yes, intraembryonic mesoderm foldings which they combine with each other, they join, they unite with each other so that this appears. This is the umbilical vesicle, which is the remnant part of the yolk sac. Okay, it finally it disappears, and the final end result of the lateral folding is this. After the disappearance of the vitelline duct and the umbilical vesicle. Now, what are the structures here that you can recall again? So, this is the somatofluoric. Because of the fusion of these two, now this intraembryonic coelom, it is forming what? It is forming peritoneal cavity. Okay, and here is this gut tube. This gut tube is attached to the posterior abdominal wall with the help of dorsal mesentery. तो ये connection था, ठीक है? This connection is now in the form of dorsal mesentery. What is this connection? Connection between the endoderm and the mesoderm. Okay, so this mesoderm is now forming dorsal mesentery. It is connecting the dorsal part to the posterior abdominal wall. What about the ventral part? Where is the ventral part of this? The ventral part is only at the part above the midgut, that is at the lower part of the esophagus, at stomach and duodenum. I'll show you the picture. So this mesoderm, it is having two parts, lateral like somatic and splanchnopluric. Okay, somatopleuric, finally it is going to form your parietal peritoneum, and splanchnic pleuric is going to form the visceral peritoneum. Now these connections are basically your peritoneal reflections, which are going to hold the organs in place in the abdominal cavity. ठीक है, तो हमने अभी ये देखा कि lateral folding की वजह से, ठीक है, क्या होगा कि सोमैटोप्लूरिक का फ्यूजन हो जाएगा दोनों तरफ से, एंड इंट्राएम्ब्रियोनिक सीलम फॉर्म होगा. इंट्राएम्ब्रियोनिक कैविटी इज intraembryonic coelomic is basically forming peritoneal cavity. This is the formation of अब दोनों तरफ से जो है क्या हो गया है यहाँ पे, this is your fusion of somatopleuric layer. This is dorsal mesentery connecting it to the posterior wall. See, this is neural tube, this is notochord. तो ये vertebral column बनाएगा ना इधर की, तो ये क्या है, posterior है, ये ventral है. This is gut tube which is derived from the endoderm. Okay, and this is peritoneal cavity. Peritoneal cavity is your abdominal cavity where all viscera are suspended. Okay, so now what is peritoneum? Peritoneum is a continuous serous lining that holds the this visceral organs in place, in position in the abdominal cavity. Okay, now this peritoneum is attached to the inner lining of the abdominal cavity, and it is reflected onto the surface of the abdominal viscera as visceral peritoneum, and on the wall as parietal peritoneum. Okay, so I wanted to just reach here at the end result that there is formation of this gut tube, there are formation of the, अब इस स्टेज पे why I am not able to see, because ये lower, ये mid gut का section है, और हमें अगर डॉर्सल साइड पे मेसेंट्री देखना है, वेंट्रल साइड पे मेसेंट्री देखना है, तो हमें सेक्शन थोड़ा ऊपर से. तो वेंट्रल मेसेंट्री इज देयर एट द पार्ट ऑफ दिस, जहाँ पे क्या होगा, सेप्टम ट्रांसवर्सल. इफ यू कैन रिकॉल सेप्टम ट्रांसवर्सल, इट इज हियर बिटवीन दिस स्टॉक एंड pericardial cavity. This is septum transversum, which is going to form, yes, central tendon of diaphragm, and basically this is the location. This is the mesodermal plate which is going to give rise to ventral mesogastrium. हमने अभी पीछे क्या देखा था, dorsal mesentery. This is the place where there is going to be formation of ventral mesentery. और इतने ही पार्ट में ventral mesentery रहेगा, and dorsal mesentery then again from the stomach to the lower part तक dorsal mesentery रहेगा. ठीक है, basically mesentery word जो हम यूज कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे, यहाँ जनरल मेसेंट्री टर्म यूज हो रहा है. दिस वी आर यूजिंग फॉर दी दिस peritoneal reflection. Okay, there is this word mesentery proper, don't talk, mesentery proper that we use for the peritoneum of the small intestine. Small intestine का खुद का जो peritoneal fold होता है, that is also known as mesentery proper. But here don't confuse this term with the mesentery proper, that is the mesentery for the small intestine. Okay, here mesentery we are talking about the peritoneum, the ventral and the dorsal peritoneum. So there is dorsal mesogastrium and there are ventral mesogastrium. Some organs are suspended in the dorsal, some organs will be suspended in the ventral mesogastrium. Okay, so this was in the last class. Now what about in today's class? Okay, so we have also discussed about the derivatives of this gut. Okay, so how you are going to divide or decide that this is foregut, this is midgut and this is hindgut? How you are going to decide? So basically, see this whole part which is starting from this to the yes, just here up to the this part जहाँ पे कि आपका लीवर पार्ट जो है लीवर बर्ड अपीयर हो रहा है, यहाँ तक का पार्ट इज फोरगट. ओके, so starting from this oropharyngeal membrane it ruptures until this part, this is foregut. Okay, now foregut is responsible for the formation of the oral cavity, for the tongue, for the pharynx, esophagus, stomach and up to the proximal part, yeah, proximal to the opening of bile duct. Okay, so basically proximal part of the duodenum, proximal to the opening of the bile duct. So up to this part over here, this is foregut. Up to this part is the pharyngeal gut, जहाँ तक कि आपका कहाँ क्या आएगा, pharynx. तो ये part जो है from the oral cavity till the pharynx is the pharyngeal gut, and we are going to discuss about its development in the head and neck section. Okay, so from this part, from the respiratory diverticulum till the liver bud, we are going to discuss about what are the structures which are going to get developed. Okay, so what we are going to discuss today, हम क्या पढ़ेंगे अभी तक तो हमने जनरल डिस्कशन किया है कि लेटरल फोल्डिंग से क्या हुआ है और सिफेलोकॉर्डल फोल्डिंग से क्या हुआ है. हम आज क्या देखेंगे कि फोरगट से क्या डेवलप हो रहा है. देन फोरगट इज फ्रॉम द ओरल कैविटी till the upper part of this liver bud. Okay, so up to the pharyngeal gut we'll discuss in the head and neck. Then below this respiratory diverticulum till the liver bud we are going to discuss today. Okay, then what about the midgut? पहले हमने देखा था there was this vitelline duct. So vitelline duct से ऊपर वाला part was foregut. Then the part that is connecting vitelline duct to the gut is the midgut, and the part that is posterior to is the hindgut. Okay, so what are this? So यहाँ पे from the this distal part of the duodenum till the junction of the right 2/3 and left 1/3 part of the transverse colon is midgut, and then from the right 1/3 to cloacal membrane is hindgut. These are the three parts, and both of all the three parts have different blood supply. Okay, so they are getting their blood supply from the branches, ventral branches coming from the abdominal aorta. Foregut is supplied by the celiac trunk, midgut is supplied by the superior mesentery, and hindgut is supplied by inferior mesentery. All the parts that are derived from the foregut will be supplied from the celiac trunk. The part which are derived from the midgut, they are going to supplied by superior mesentery, and the part derived from the this hindgut, they are going to get supply from the inferior mesentery. ठीक है, तो foregut कहाँ तक का part है, liver bud. After that, caudal to the liver bud up to the right 2/3 and left 1/3 transverse colon is midgut, and then we have from right 1/3 part till the left 1/3 part till the cloacal membrane we have hindgut. Okay, they have different blood supply: celiac trunk, superior mesentery artery and inferior mesenteric artery. So now let's start with the pharynx के बाद pharynx part pharyngeal gut that will discuss in head and neck. तो उसके बाद क्या आता है, esophagus. So we'll start with the development of esophagus. इसको बाहर भेज दे जो तुम्हारे पास बैठा है थर्ड. हाँ, बाहर भेज दे, इसको बोलो चलो भाई बाहर जाओ. यहाँ सोने का तो कोई मतलब नहीं है ना, घर जाके सो जाओ. गो बाहर जाके सो जाओ या खड़े हो जाओ. फिर पीछे वाले को दिखेगा नहीं, तो यहाँ आके खड़े हो. So epithelial lining of the endoderm is forming esophagus, it is forming stomach, it is forming duodenum and pancreas. So near about the 4th week of development, okay, there is this respiratory diverticulum that appears from the ventral part of the foregut. Okay, so it grows downwards and it splits into two lung buds. Okay, posterior to this, now the foregut is separated from this respiratory diverticulum with the help of esophageal tracheal septum or trachoesophageal septum. There is this ventral outgrowth from the endodermal lining of the foregut which is forming respiratory diverticulum. This respiratory diverticulum is also known as lung bud, going to split into the two and then it develops into the lung. Posterior to this, now foregut is separated from this respiratory diverticulum with the development of trachoesophageal septum. This trachoesophageal septum completes and there is growth of the lengthening of the esophagus downwards with the development of the other structures in the head and lung and with the development of the lungs downwards. What happens? This esophagus, it also gradually shifts downwards and increases in length. Okay. So epithelial lining of the esophagus is derived from the endoderm. Also esophagus is having muscular coat. You have read in the histology. There are muscles of the esophagus, then there will be the connective tissue of the esophagus, blood supply, these are derived from the splenic mesoderm. Okay. What about the upper 1/3 part of the esophagus? What is the nature of the muscle? It is striated. Then in the middle 1/3, there are striated plus smooth muscles. In the lower 1/3 part, there are smooth muscles. So upper part, striated muscles are supplied by the vagus nerve and the lower part is supplied by the splenic nerve. Okay. So because of the development of respiratory diverticulum and separation of the trachoesophageal septum, this cut tube it lengthens and it forms esophagus and start forming near about 4th week of intrauterine life. So we have this esophageal epithelial lining is derived from the endoderm and muscular coat is derived from the splenic pleuric mesoderm along with its connective tissue coat. This is the development of esophagus. Now what is the clinical associated? This is also you have studied in the theory class. Esophagus, see what happens once this tube is formed, first it is obliterated and then again recanalization of the tube takes place. Okay. So if there is incomplete recanalization of this tube, there is going to be esophageal stenosis. Some part of the esophagus is going to get constricted. Pay attention. Some part of the esophagus at some point is going to get constricted because of the failure of canalization or incomplete canalization. Esophageal atresia, canalization I'll show you in the development of duodenum. Okay, whole tube is filled, obliterated by the epithelial tissue and then there are formation of the spaces and again it is canalized. We say canal ban gaya iske andar. That is canalization of the esophagus. Now esophageal atresia, failure of the formation of part of the esophagus. Normally this esophageal atresia, it is associated with the trachoesophageal septum. Both the conditions they occur simultaneously. One part of the esophagus is atreted and one part opens into the trachea and forming a fistula. Okay. Last is this ecalcia ecardia. Basically, Sir has told that he has explained you this. What happens here in the lower part of the esophagus? Stand up. Yes, there are loss of ganglionic cells in the iambic plexus, which results in the continuous contraction of the muscular coat of the lower part of the esophagus. Okay, so here is the clinical. This is the important clinical. It comes in your short notes. So here, what happens is there is either tracheoesophageal septum, it shifts to the posteriorly into the esophagus, or there is the shifting of the foregut ventrally, interiorly an opening into the trachea. Now, these are different conditions of the esophageal atresia and tracheoesophageal fistula. This being the most common condition occurring in the 90% of the cases. Then these are the occurring in the 4% of cases, and this in the rarest case in the 1% of cases. Now, what are the differences? Upper part is atreated and there is a blind end of the esophagus. Lower part of the esophagus is opening into the, so lower part is forming a fistula with the trachea. Then in this part, both upper and the lower part of the esophagus, they are separated and they are forming, lower part is blind on the upper end and upper part is blind on the lower end. Then we have third condition in which the esophagus is connected in the middle to the trachea. Then in this condition, upper part is opening and lower part is atreated, and here both upper part and the lower part are opening separately into the trachea. So these are the different conditions of what? Different forms of tracheoesophageal fistula. Okay. Next we have development of stomach. The part just below the formation of respiratory diverticulum, जो gut part हमने देखा है, foregut part, तो जो part just respiratory diverticulum के नीचे है, that is below the formation of esophagus, it is fusiform. ठीक है, it grows, it forms fusiform dilatation. Okay, then there are two rotations that takes place in the stomach. One is 90-degree rotation and one is antero-posterior rotation of the stomach. What is happening here? Because of the differential growth in the wall of the stomach and because of the different structures growing simultaneously, there are two positional changes occurring in the stomach. One is 90-degree rotation along the longitudinal axis and one is a rotation around the antero-posterior axis. So what is happening in the longitudinal rotation? What is happening in the longitudinal rotation? See, something is, if I rotate here, what is happening? My left side is becoming interior and my right side is becoming posterior. So here also the left side of the esophagus, it becomes interior and right side of the this stomach becomes posterior. And this also explains the nerve supply of the stomach. The left vagus, it innervates antero-superior part of the stomach because initially it is innervating the left side, which is now becoming the antero-superior side of the stomach. And likewise, right vagus, it innervates the posterior-superior surface of the stomach because initially it is innervating the right side of the stomach and now which is becoming the posterior. Okay. So left vagus innervates the anterior surface of the stomach and right vagus innervates the posterior surface of the stomach. Now again stomach rotates along the antero-posterior axis so that this upper end or the cardiac end, it shifts a little downwards and towards the left side, and this pyloric end, it shifts a little upper on the upper side and on the right side. Okay, these are the two rotations that takes place. Also the interior surface of the stomach, it grows more rapidly as compared to the posterior. We are talking about the initial stage, so that the interior border, it becomes the left larger border and the posterior border, it becomes the lesser curvature of the stomach. Because of the difference in the growth rate, it becomes the greater one and it becomes the lesser curvature. Okay, you can sit here. So what is happening over here? Because of differential growth in the walls of the stomach and because of the growth of the other structures, there are two rotations. One is 90-degree, one is antero-posterior. 90-degree changing left surface into the anterior surface, right surface into posterior surface. Likewise, it is explaining the innervation of the stomach. And then around the anterior posterior axis, this cranial end or the esophageal end, it comes little lower and to the left, and the lower end, at the pyloric end, it goes upwards and towards the right. And the greater curvature, which is the anterior one, it grows faster than the posterior one and becomes larger than the lesser curvature. So one condition related, common condition is congenital pyloric stenosis. This is the pyloric end of the stomach. There is thickening of this because of hypertrophy of circular muscle. Here there is pyloric sphincter, which is occupied by the circular muscle cord. Thickening of the circular muscle cord lead to the pyloric stenosis. This is common case in the male, around 1 in 150 and around 1 in every 750. So this, what happens, newborn is normal until the first feed. After 2 to 3 hours, it will vomit out in the projectile fashion, and there is no bile here in the food because stenosis is occurring here in the upper, just above the duodenum. So when vomit comes, there is no bile, so that means that stenosis occurs here at the level upper, like at the level upper superior to the duodenum. So this was our discussion about esophagus. Esophagus, dorsal to the respiratory diverticulum, endodermal lining forming the tube, and muscles are derived from the slackening mesoderm. Then we have stomach. Again, the fusiform dilatation, there is 90 clockwise rotation, and then anterior-posterior rotation. And then we have, again, we are going to discuss about what? Any guess? Pehle we will discuss about changes in this ventral mesogastrium and dorsal mesogastrium. तो अभी कितने लोग हैं जिनको समझ में आ गया है what is dorsal mesogastrium and what is ventral mesogastrium? Yes. बस इतना एक ही जना. Mesoderm, you know, so mesoderm give rise to this peritoneum. The peritoneum anteriorly it forms ventral mesogastrium and posteriorly dorsal mesogastrium. कहीं तो देखो एक peritoneal cavity है, ठीक है? Please look forward. So peritoneal cavity में there are viscera. What do you need these viscera to be there in position? Peritoneum is going to hold them through their reflections, even known as ligaments. Ligaments are the peritoneal modifications only. Those are going to hold the viscera in the anatomic position. The one like आप ventral mesogastrium से ही peritoneal reflections derive करोगे, dorsal से dorsal peritoneal reflections derive करोगे, ठीक है? तो ventral mesogastrium कहाँ तक है सर? जहाँ पे septum transversum, ये green color है, this is दोनों तरफ से, this is the part of the gut tube, okay? This is your gut tube shown in the yellow color क्योंकि endoderm से derive हो रहा है. ये जो green color वाला part है, that is mesogastrium. Okay, the part which is holding these viscera in position. So here the part which is so the part, yes, so part of this mesogastrium present anteriorly, सिर्फ वेंट्रल मेसोगैस्ट्रियम अपर पार्ट पे होगा. तो आप यहाँ से ध्यान से देखो तो यहाँ पे कहीं पर भी लोअर पार्ट में मेसोगैस्ट्रियम नहीं है, सिर्फ अपर पार्ट में देयर इज वेंट्रल मेसोगैस्ट्रियम दैट इज इन द लोअर पार्ट ऑफ इसोफेगस एट द पार्ट ऑफ स्टमक अप टू द लेवल ऑफ डियोडनम. ठीक है, तो ये कहाँ जा रहा है? इट इज फॉर्म्ड बाय द सेप्टम ट्रांसवर्सम. ठीक है, एंड पोस्टीरियरली वी हैव दिस डॉर्सल मेसोगैस्ट्रियम फ्रॉम एक्सटेंडिंग फ्रॉम द स्टमक टिल हियर अप टू द हाइंडगट. ओके, तो डॉर्सल मेसोगैस्ट्रियम तो पूरा पीछे डॉर्सली प्रेजेंट है, वेंट्रल मेसोगैस्ट्रियम सिर्फ ऊपर वाले पार्ट पे है. ठीक है, आप समझ में आया? व्हाट इज मेसोगैस्ट्रियम? दीज आर द मेसेंट्रीज, दीज आर द फोल्ड व्हिच आर होल्डिंग द गट इन पोजीशन, इन द एनाटॉमिक पोजीशन. नेक्स्ट, बिकॉज ऑफ द, अब वो आएगा म्यूजिक, जो खुश हो गए हो तुम लोग इतना. ठीक है, अब क्या हो रहा है? अदर स्ट्रक्चर्स आर ग्रोइंग एंड स्टमक रोटेट हो रहा है. ठीक है, So because I told you dorsal mesogastrium is there, dorsal to the stomach, ventral mesogastrium is ventral to the stomach. अब stomach ऐसे घूमेगा तो ये चीज भी तो disturb होगा. So there is also change. Earlier they are attached to the center. Now they also going to shift their position because of growth of the stomach. Okay, so how they are going to shift? Is back on you. Okay. So we have dorsal mesogastrium, we have ventral mesogastrium. Because of shifting of the stomach, there is change in the position of the dorsal mesogastrium. Now because of the growth of the stomach, it shifts towards the left side. Okay, and also it grows, it bulges downwards. It also grows and bulges downwards and form greater omentum. The whole part of the abdominal cavity where visceras are there, that is greater sac. Okay? Whole part of abdominal cavity is greater sac. The part now which is formed because of the movement of this dorsal mesogastrium on the left side, the part behind the stomach is omental bursa or lesser sac. ठीक है, हम क्या डिस्कस कर रहे हैं अगेन? Formation of omental bursa. Omental bursa is lesser sac. The whole part of abdominal cavity is greater sac. The part of the abdominal cavity behind the stomach part, because of the movement of the dorsal mesogastrium, form lesser sac. So there are also shifting of the mesogastrium because of the 90-degree rotation of the stomach. This again you are going to study in your abdominal cavity. Here I have shown this diagram. This is the sagittal section of the peritoneal cavity. What are these shown in the green color? These are the peritoneal reflections. Okay. Whole of this is basically lesser sac. These are the double layer of the dorsal mesogastrium going downwards, becoming greater omentum. So this greater omentum is attached on the greater curvature of the stomach, and on the lesser curvature we have lesser omentum. Posterior to this, again we have peritoneal reflection attached to the posterior abdominal wall. For example, we have this mesentery of the transverse colon holding in position. Then we have mesentery of small intestine holding into the posterior abdominal wall. Okay, so every organ is here. So mesentery is basically holding these organ in position. This mesentery is covering the surface of the viscera from all around. That kind of viscera is known as intraperitoneal viscera. If mesentery is covering both the surfaces of the viscera, then it is known as interperitoneal viscera. Like stomach is interperitoneal, anteriorly and posteriorly it is covered by the peritoneum. Now can you have a look on duodenum and pancreas? Pancreas posteriorly are not covered by the peritoneum. Only anteriorly they are covered by the peritoneum. There is no attachment of the pancreas dorsally. Now these kind of organs that are present behind the peritoneum are known as retroperitoneal organs. And kidney is again a retroperitoneal organ. Okay, so this duodenum is initially peritoneal, and then the mesoduodenum it vanishes and it becomes retroperitoneal except at the proximal part of the duodenum. Okay, so this is the sagittal section of the peritoneal cavity. Okay, there are the locations which are shown here: the stomach, then pancreas, duodenum, large intestine and small intestine. Okay, so why I have shown this? Because The parietal peritoneum only, it forms reflections or the ligaments that holds these organs in position. Now according to their attachment to the organ, they have given a specific name. For example, if they are holding the duodenum, they are known as mesoduodenum. If they are holding the appendix, it is known as mesoappendix. If they are holding the small intestine, they are known as mesentery. If they are holding the colon, then it is known as mesocolon. Next, development of duodenum. Now duodenum is basically in between the foregut and the midgut. Some part of the duodenum is derived from foregut and some part is derived from the midgut. Yani ki part up to the proximal to the duct is derived from the foregut and distal to the duct is derived from the hindgut. Okay, now because it is tubular again. Now because of the movement of the stomach, this also rotates towards the right side and form a C-shaped structure on the right side. So basically this C shape, the convexity of the C is on the right side and concavity of the C is towards the stomach on the left side. Okay, so duodenum is basically derived from both foregut and midgut. Okay, so it is going to have blood supply from both foregut and midgut. So what will be the blood supply here? It is going to get blood supply from the celiac trunk and from the superior mesentery artery. Okay, so because of the movement of the stomach, it also shifts towards the right side. Initially, it is covered by the mesoduodenum posteriorly, which connects it to the posterior abdominal wall, and with time, this mesoduodenum, it vanishes so that duodenum becomes retroperitoneal except at the upper part. Now this is the diagram which is showing shifting of the duodenum towards the right side, it forming a C-shaped loop on the right side. Okay, in this transverse section, it is shown that it is intraperitoneal, and then where is this peritoneum attached to posteriorly? This is its mesoduodenum, which vanishes, and the duodenum is there attached onto the posterior abdominal wall without any peritoneum. So it becomes retroperitoneal. So there is this first solid stage, there is this tube that is formed. Okay, then because of the proliferation of the epithelial cells, now the small spaces start appearing during the third month of intrauterine life, and it forms again a canal. It is recanalized again, like we had discussed in the esophagus. First it is obliterated and then it becomes recanalized. So again same problem can occur here also. Yes, what kind of problem? There can be duodenal stenosis. देखो मैं पढ़ाऊंगी नहीं और मैं निकल जाऊंगी यहाँ से, समझ में आया ना? ऐसा कभी नहीं हुआ है मेरी क्लास में. क्या हो रहा है ये? कितने बदतमीज हो तुम लोग? कितनी बार बोल दिया आपको? इतना इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक है, इतना अच्छे से चल रहा है, क्या दिक्कत है आप लोगों को? आवाज नहीं करेगा कोई अभी? We had discussed in the esophageal stenosis. Likewise, there is duodenal stenosis. What is that? There can be incomplete recanalization. Stenosis का मतलब क्या हुआ? At some point it is constricted. The tube is constricted. Why it can be constricted? Why there is congenital malformation? Because of there is incomplete recanalization of the duodenum. Okay, or there may be incomplete, or there may be complete occlusion because of incomplete recanalization, or because of no recanalization there will be atresia. Atresia is basically complete obliteration of the duodenum, and incomplete is stenosis. Some part is constricted. In both the cases, what will happen? The food will come out. After having food, the child will again vomit it out, and because there is opening of the bile duct here, now the food will come out mixed with the bile juice. And we discussed here in the stomach that food will come out, vomit out without any bile, because वो stomach से आ रहा है, और यहाँ अगर duodenum से vomit out होगा, so it will be mixed with the bile, because there is opening of the bile duct here in the duodenum. Next, because there is obliteration, we have also discussed that the this developing infant, it ingests this amniotic fluid which goes into the GIT, then it is absorbed and then it is excreted. But if it is obliterated, what is going to happen once the fluid is taken in? Okay, so what is going to happen? It is not absorbed, so there is polyhydramnion because of accumulation of large amount of amniotic fluid. Duodenal diverticulum, small pouches, they develop basically in the second part of duodenum. Small outgrowths from the duodenal wall appears that are known as duodenal diverticulum. Now this is development of the liver. I really don't like to carry it forward because आप लोगों में बिल्कुल भी तमीज नहीं है. So, like we are coming like to the end of the part of the foregut. We had discussed that it basically from the oral cavity till the cranial part of the this like to the caudal part of the this liver bud. Okay, so now liver bud is arising again ventrally. There is this hepatic bud. This is outpouching from the endodermal. So liver primordium is basically forming from the endodermal lining. It's forming a hepatic bud. Now this hepatic bud again is splitting into two. This cranial part is the part hepatica and the caudal part. So this is hepatic bud. This is an outpouching. This is the basic liver primordium. Then it is again dividing into two. The cranial one is pars hepatica. There are two buds. Can you see here? The cranial one is pars hepatica and the lower one is pars cystica. So the pars hepatica is forming the part of the parenchyma of the liver and the duct, hepatic duct, and pars cystica is going to form the gallbladder and the cystic duct. The proximal part of this hepatic duct, it is going to form bile duct. It narrows down, and this terminal part, it goes, grows out, and it divides. It divides into first right and left hepatic duct, and then it divides into the bile ducts and like small bile ductules and bile canuliculi. Okay. Also, the terminal parts of these ducts, they form cords of the liver cells. Okay, it forms the cells columns here. I'll show you in the last diagram in the liver. And in between the cords of the liver cells, there are spaces that are created. Those spaces are filled with the sinusoid. Now, the sinusoid blood is derived from the vitelline duct and from the umbilical vein. And so, parenchyma of the liver is derived from this endodermal lining or epithelium lining of the hepatic duct. The hepatic capsules, then other hemopoietic cells, Kupffer cells, these are derived from the mesoderm. Okay, so main parts, this liver cells or the hepatocytes are derived from the epithelial lining of the hepatic duct, and its Kupffer cells or hematopoietic cells and its own capsule and connective tissue is derived from the mesoderm. Okay. So it is going to form right and left hepatic duct, then the bile duct, canalicules and ductules, and the liver parenchyma. Here again this distal part is going to form the gallbladder and its proximal part is going to form cystic duct. Now there is this combination of cystic duct with the common hepatic duct to form, yes. So there is formation of common bile duct which is first opening here onto the ventral side, but because of the movement of this duodenum, it shifts to the dorsomedial side. So this opens finally into the posterior part of the duodenum rather than into the anterior part because of the rightward movement of the duodenum. Okay. So what we have discussed, in the middle of the third week, there is appearance of this ventral bud from the lower part of the foregut, which is known as liver bud. It is splitting into two, forming pars hepatica and pars cystica. Pars hepatica going to form hepatic duct and the cords of the liver cells, and pars cystica going to form cystic duct and the gallbladder, and their ducts are going to fuse to form common bile duct, which is going to open in the dorsomedial part of the duodenum. So these were the cords of the cells which we were talking about. These are the hepatic cells. These are derived from the epithelial lining of the duct. These are the Kupffer cells lining the sinusoid. These are the sinusoids. This blood in the sinusoid is derived from the umbilical vein, and these Kupffer cells and capsule of the liver, these are derived from the mesoderm. Also reflections, ligaments of the liver like falciform ligament, coronary Ligaments, these are again derived from the mesoderm surrounding the liver. So these are the parts of the liver, and these are the embryonic source. For example, liver parenchyma, bile canaliculi, and these are derived from the hepatic duct and connective tissue. Its own capsule is known as Gleason's capsule. Connective tissue, stroma, coffers, and blood vessels from the mesoderm. Next, we have ligaments, reflections. These are all derived from the ventral mesogastrium. Ligamentum teres is derived from the left umbilical. Remnant of the left umbilical vein forms the ligamentum teres, and ligamentum venosum is the basically remnant of ductus venosus. And sinusoids, basically they are continuation vitreous and umbilical veins. Then source ductus we have discussed. These are the different conditions of the gallbladder. This is normal gallbladder. There is a formation of the cap of the bulging of the body of the gallbladder, which is Frisian cap. Then we have Hartmann's pouch. In the neck, there is extra pouch that is coming out, which is known as Hartmann's pouch. Sessile gallbladder, there is no cystic duct. Okay. And in the septic gallbladder, septas and the lumens are formed. So because of the formation of this liver bud, let me go to this part again. So this hepatic duct, it grows into the septum transversum, okay, and liver enlarges into septum transversum, so that the part of the septum transversum, the mesoderm, which is interior to the liver and connecting to the interior wall of the abdomen, this part is forming the falciform ligament. Because of the development of the liver here, the interior part of the septum transversum is going to form falciform ligament of the liver. Here falciform ligament of the liver is going to form, and the part which is behind the liver and connecting to the stomach, here the lesser omentum of the stomach is going to get connect here, like going to get form over here. Okay, so this septum transversum is forming what? Ventral mesogastrium. Liver is growing in the ventral mesogastrium and going to divide into two parts. The interior one is falciform ligament, and the posterior one, which is connecting to the stomach, is the lesser omentum. Likewise, in the posterior to the stomach, okay, we have this dorsal mesogastrium, which is occupied by the spleen. Okay, so dorsal mesogastrium, here posterior to the stomach, it gives rise to the spleen. So spleen kahan se derive ho rahi hai? From the mesoderm, not from the endoderm. Okay, so we are going to development of pancreas. Yes, we'll take it fast. Just below this liver bud, there is appearance of this ventral bud in the mesoduodenum. This is known as ventral pancreatic duct. Likewise, on the opposite side, posteriorly, we have dorsal pancreatic duct. Okay, so pancreas develop from the two buds, ventral pancreatic bud and the dorsal pancreatic bud. One is just below the liver bud ventrally, and another on the posterior side. Okay, now what happens, because ये जो duodenum rotate कर रहा है on the right side, तो bile duct भी move हो रहा है, वो अब dorsomedial wall में open हो रहा है. With the bile duct, it is also going to shift towards the dorsal side, the ventral bud of the pancreas, and both of these buds, they are going to fuse together and form the parenchyma of the pancreas. Okay, so ventral bud, it moves dorsally and it reaches downwards to the dorsal pancreatic bud. So it is below the dorsal pancreatic bud and they are going to get fused. Okay, again they have these ducts over here. Yes, the terminal part of the ducts are going to form acini. It has exocrine part and the endocrine part. Exocrine part are the acini, serous acini are there in the pancreas, and some of these cells, they get separated from this terminal part and they form clusters which are known as islets of Langerhans. Okay, so eyelids of Langerhans start secreting this insulin around the 5th month of intrauterine life. Now, just concentrate over here for the fusion of the pancreatic duct. Okay, so this is dorsal pancreatic duct, this is ventral pancreatic duct. So this is dorsal pancreatic duct and this is ventral pancreatic duct. Now distal part of this dorsal pancreatic duct is going to fuse with the ventral pancreatic duct and form common pancreatic duct of Wirsing, main pancreatic duct of the pancreas. Likewise, the proximal part, it may disappear or it may form an extra pancreatic duct which is known as duct of Santorini or the accessory pancreatic duct. So this accessory pancreatic duct is proximal part of the this dorsal duct, dorsal pancreatic duct, and this part, main pancreatic duct, is contribution of the ventral pancreatic duct and distal part of the dorsal pancreatic duct. Okay. So basically, the cells are again here derived from the endoderm, exocrine and endocrine part, and the connective tissues and septa, these are derived from the mesoderm. And this is retroperitoneal organ. It is present behind. So these are the sources, embryological sources of the pancreas. Lower part and head, because ventral part it goes downwards, so uncinate process lies inferiorly, and lower part of the head is formed by the ventral pancreatic duct. Then upper part of head, neck, body and tail is formed by the dorsal. Most of the part of the pancreas is formed by the dorsal pancreatic duct, including the upper part of head, neck, body and tail, except the lower part of the head and uncinate process, which is formed by the ventral pancreatic duct. Main pancreatic duct, it is basically union of ventral pancreatic duct and distal part of dorsal pancreatic duct. What you are doing, this girl? What you are doing? Yes, you. तो पहले समझो तो सही उसको, या continue or writing, you are just listening or you have to just, I don't prefer you open your books. You can open your books at your home, you just listen and write. Okay. Accessory pancreatic duct, proximal part of the ventral, is written wrongly, it's dorsal pancreatic duct, and then connective tissue is derived from the mesoderm. This is the important clinical which comes in your exam, annular pancreas. So we are moving on the last part. Annular pancreas is, there is usually one pancreatic duct and one dorsal pancreatic duct. Okay. In some cases what happens, there are two ventral pancreatic ducts, right and the left. Here you can see in the diagram, there are two pancreatic ducts. Now this left pancreatic duct, it takes the usual course. It goes towards the posterior side and fuses with the dorsal pancreatic. But the duct which is, the bird which is on the ventral side, on the left side, it goes ventrally towards the pancreas. Okay. So they are forming a ring around the second part of the duodenum. This kind of condition is known as annular pancreas, and what they are doing, they are constricting the lumen of the duodenum. Okay. So it's because of the failure of the rotation of, sir ho gaya, failure because of the rotation of the left pancreatic part anteriorly or ventrally. Okay. Next we have, last is development of spleen. Spleen develops in the dorsal. It's very small, nothing is there. It forms in the form of small pieces of mesenchyme which are known as spleneculi. Please pay attention. Spleen develops in the dorsal mesogastrium. Okay. It develops in the form of small pieces which are known as spleneculi. Then with time these spleneculi, they unite together and form a complete spleen. So there is formation of spleneculi which are derived from the mesoderm. There is fusion of the spleneculi. They form a single spleen mass. In an adult spleen, there are notches that you are going to notice on the borders, on the superior border. These notches basically they signify the union of these lobulated masses. स्प्लीन छोटे छोटे masses में फ्यूज हो रहा है, तो ये फ्यूजन कहाँ डिनोट होगा, जहाँ पे इसके नॉचेस बनेंगे. So basically lobulated development is denoted by the splenic notches. So splenic it changes position because of the change in the position of the stomach. Also, it occupies posterior this part, na? Posterior part, that is dorsal mesogastrium. So the reflections between spleen and greater curvature of the stomach is gastrosplenic ligament, and the reflection between the spleen and the kidney is splenorenal ligament. Spleen is occupying dorsal mesogastrium here. So there will be a reflection connecting it to the posterior abdominal wall. So this reflection going towards the kidney is splenorenal ligament, and the reflection which is going towards the stomach, to the fundus and the greater curvature, this is gastrosplenic ligament. So there may be non-union of the spleen, failure of fusion of the spleneculi, or there may be incomplete fusion of spleneculi.